All right, good morning and greetings and salutations to everybody out there in YouTube land. I'm your host once again, Dan Thornton, and I want to thank you all for tuning in today to Lions Talk Live. You know what? We're down to just days before the NFL draft. We're about a week and 2 days away, and you know what? We've got a special guest for you today, maybe two if Kurt Steele can make it. But Anthony from Lions UK, hey, he's going to jump on this morning show, talk to us a little bit. Anthony, tell us a little bit about yourself and what where people can find you if they want to look you up.
Yeah, well, thanks first for having me on, Dan. Really appreciate coming on and chatting with you. Yeah, I'm Andy from Roar Lions UK, part of the British contingent of Detroit Lions YouTubers out there. We provide a perspective of the Lions from across the pond, as you were. But yeah, thanks ever so much for having me on. I just love chatting Lions.
Hey, nothing. You're in a good spot for it, then, man. We got the Do crew ready to chat with you and break things down. Kurt Steele may be joining us if he can hop on. I know he's got a couple of delays this morning, but if he can, we'll get him on too. Real quick, before we get into the meat of today's show, a couple of topics. One, if you haven't yet subscribed to Lions Talk Live, please consider doing so. We're about 10 or so subs away from hitting 6,400. So if you could help out with that, it would be great. Also, if you enjoy the content within the video, pretty pleased with sugar on top and Mountain Dew, consider hitting that thumbs up button. Last but never least, if you are considering buying or selling property anywhere in the great state of Michigan, give me a call or shoot me a text. You see the number on the screen, 269-998-2384. Reach out to me and let me see if I can use 30 years of work within the industry to help save you some money, make the process easier. It can be anywhere from the Upper Peninsula to Detroit, Saginaw area, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, or any place in between. Feel free to give me a call or shoot me a text, and we'll get you on. All right. Also joining us this morning is the infamous one, Kurt the Hitman Steele. Is there truth? I want to have some breaking news here on Lions Talk Live. Is there truth, Kurt, that you are coming out of retirement and to resume your WWE career?
Yeah, no. But I am coming out of retirement and returning to some digital content, so I will be doing that. But yeah, my WWE career with my knees and my back, yeah, I just can't do it anymore.
Fair enough. Man. Now, Kurt, if people want to find out, reach out to you after seeing you on today's show, where would they go to look for you?
You can find me on X at Curtis Steele, at Kurt Steele 14. Curtis Steele 14. You can go to the easiest way is to go to kurtsteele.com. That's it. All the links to my social, all my articles, either be on my own site or on Sideline Report, or the archives for my other ventures are right there on the homepage, my YouTube channel. Everything's right there on kurtsteele.com. You can check me out right there.
Okay. And now today, obviously, we're a little over a week away from the NFL draft. So a lot of the chatter about the Detroit Lions are going to be about that. We've got some comments out of both Jared Goff and also Taylor Decker. Let's start with that, all of you. And I guess we'll go clockwise here. We'll go Anthony and then Kurt. Taylor Decker, I've been talking about a little bit on the show that I felt like last year he had lost a step, especially when you looked at him, weak side, so his left side. Anytime somebody put a pass rush move on him, just seemed like he lost some mobility and some flexibility there. Now we've uncovered that perhaps he had been dealing with a long-term injury. He's got surgery done on it. Both of you, one at a time. Do you think this impacts his future with Detroit? Will he get another contract?
I mean, it's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, I've always been, like, going back to when Taylor first started here, one of his more harsher critics. When the new deal was done, I wasn't convinced at the time. But obviously, he's paid it off in spades the way he's played for this team. And I always try and give him the benefit of the doubt for now. I thought he played at a decent level last year. I mean, like, our offensive line was really good. Running game was really good. He is a key component of what we do here. So I would like to see him stay. I guess in an ideal world for me, because he's got 1 year of his deal left, you kind of let him play this last year, see his level of performance. If he continues on playing really well this year, playing at a high level, if we have to pay him a little more next year so he doesn't get to free agency, fine. I don't mind that. And if obviously he has another year where he regresses, if the injury gets too much for him, then you part ways. So, like, I would like to see him stay. I still think he has something to offer. He's only going to be 31, I think, at the end of his deal. He's 3 years younger than me, so he can have another contract here. It would be better for us if he can stay and carry on performing at the level he does. Means you don't have to invest in another left tackle. But for me, I'd play the waiting game and wait and see with him this year.
Yeah, for me, I think with Taylor Decker, if he has another solid season, I think you bring him in on a 2-year deal, maybe 3 years with a void year. You want to keep that cornerstone piece. You know, he's one of those guys. He's been here forever, and I'm not with offensive linemen. I'm not concerned about the age. You know, that's not a big thing for me. Just because people, he's lost a step. Yeah, well, he was injured. So, you know, we found, like you said, Dan, we found out he was injured. With me, I think that when you have a offensive lineman that's aging, they rely on more technique and more football IQ to get their job done. They don't just have to rely on their, physical attributes. It's more of a cerebral thing. And you look at some of the, like Wentworth and some of those other guys that played tackle forever, Trent Williams, you look at these guys, they're way past, 29, 30, they're well to their 30s and they're productive players. There are a lot of people that never liked Taylor Decker at left tackle for the Lions. It's just, you look at some of the fan base, there's some people that have been critical of Taylor Decker for years, but I think he's been a solid player for Detroit. And I think he's a key piece of that offensive line. And anybody you bring in, and you can keep him in Detroit, and he can look at mentoring his replacement. Some people are convinced that the Lions are going to move Penei Sewell to left tackle if they get rid of Taylor Decker. I'm not convinced of that. If you look at Penei Sewell, he's developing into he's an all-pro right tackle. So why would you get rid of an all-pro at a position to move him somewhere else? You bring in another guy and you get him in there and you make him an all-pro at the left tackle. So it is what it is. But I think you're going to see at least Taylor Decker for at least 2 to 3 more seasons in Detroit.
Okay. Now, also in topics yesterday, Jared Goff came out and talked a little bit about, hey, he's begun some level of conversations with the Lions in regards to a contract extension, something reiterated by Taylor Decker. You look at this year's upcoming Lions team, and Kurt, we'll go with you first. Uh-huh. You see a lot of contracts that are coming up and coming off the books after this upcoming season. Is this any kind of segue or give us any indication maybe what the Lions will do with the NFL draft or what direction they may be going long-term with the team beyond this upcoming season?
It is possible. You're going to have some players that's not going to be in Detroit either past this season or actually maybe this season. You may see a draft day trade where you move up, you trade a guy for a pick or something like that. It's possible. You never know with Brad Holmes, but it's going to be some guys that's not going to be in Detroit. Maybe some fan favorites, maybe some guys that are maybe down the depth chart that the Lions fans love, but you can't keep them all. And you look at the team in Detroit right now, there's not a lot of positions that rookie could come in and start. So I think the Lions are going to be looking at maybe some depth pieces, but some of the guys that are here in Detroit right now that I like and other fans like aren't going to be here because they're going to get traded away or they're not going to make the roster.
Yeah, you got to figure the reason none of the contracts have been done yet, and maybe it is because of the draft. And, I don't think it's going to affect the strategy of what they do. Brad just drafts his guys. He'll have his little list of 20 guys, 25 guys that they've compiled together, and they'll go up, down, all around to get them. And then afterwards, you see what the draft gives you, and then you build after that. That's Brad's mantle. If a big tackle was to fall in the draft and you went up and got him, and then maybe you don't do Taylor's deal so soon because you might have got the guy of the future who you weren't expecting to get anything like that. So, yeah, I don't think the draft's going to be affected. I think they're just going to see what happens, who falls, who they get, and then afterwards sort of work accordingly to it. That's what Brad usually does. And, worked so far. So I'm not going to question him on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this far into Brad Holmes' tenure here in Detroit, most people are going to say, hey, he's just knocked the ball out of the park. What do you want to say? Slam dunked it. They've rebuilt this franchise seemingly overnight and so incredibly fast. The fact that we're talking about there's potential, at least, for this Lions team to, make another run at the Super Bowl, get into the playoffs. You think back 3 years ago where this franchise was, and man, hey, what can you say about the job that this front office has done and what has led to such a quick turnaround to where you could say Detroit's, if not the best team in the NFC, they're at least one of the top, 3 teams in the NFC and perhaps even in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing you've got to do with it is your cap. Like when he first came here, there was no cap. We had all these horrendous contracts on the book, all Bob Quinn's cast-offs. Like we dealt with, I think, what was it? The first year we had 102 odd million in IR and dead cap money, etc. I mean, what are you going to do with that? Like when almost half your cap is done up and you can't even use it, you're in a rough situation there. So first and foremost, it's been the draft. You found your cornerstones like Amon-Ra, Penny, Aiden, like that's the central figure to building your team. You find these key pieces through the draft. They've been very diligent at getting the late round picks right, fleshing out the depth there, the free agency signings. Like I know a lot of people have a go at him about it, but he throws a lot of flyers out, 1 year deals, stuff that doesn't affect you in the long term. Right. You only need a couple of these little darts to hit to keep fleshing out that roster, and then you can just slowly build and build and build. And the critical thing is he's not rushed the process. He's not gone out and made any panic signings. He's not tried to speed things up. He's just let it take its natural course. And one of the biggest things is the coaching as well. Like they've developed their players exceedingly well. We kept the right coaches from the previous regime. We only kept Hank and Ben. Well, I mean, they're 2 of our best coaches now, and they've brought in guys to supplement them who've developed these guys at an incredibly good rate. And I think the thing is, the big thing was the culture. Like, you hear culture as a buzzword all the time. All the culture's here, the culture's there. We can all see Detroit's culture. Dan was just talking about it yesterday. It's like we may not take on paper the most talented players. We take the players who are very talented, who fit us. And that culture resonates, and they work together as a team because they're all aligned in the same direction. That helps the development of your team go faster. So it's just hitting so many problems we've had in the past. You sort the money out, you sort the culture out, and you raise the talent levels. And that's the difference we see in such a short period of time. And the great thing now, Brad says, we're set up for multiple years to keep going at this. We don't have that many big contracts on the books at the moment. We can afford to pay all these draft picks of ours and still have space and still keep going. And we'll still keep drafting well, which means if we can't, trade them away, get the new guys. It's just a perfect marriage of everybody in this organization coming together for the end goal.
All said.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, man. Like, you look at the culture and what they've brought with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. I've never seen a GM and a coach in Detroit in such a lockstep. And these guys, I look at what they're building and how they're building it, and they've said the same thing over and over again. We want guys that fit us. Like Ant said, you want guys that fit our culture. Right. That's why a lot of people get so butthurt about Brad Holmes and free agency because, this guy was out here. But, they're looking at, you look at that pro scouting department, they're looking at guys that fit their culture and fit the scheme. And just because a guy's a big name or he's a big talent doesn't mean he fits Detroit. And they're dead set on, we want guys that fit our culture. They fit what we do here in Detroit. I don't care what his talent level is. If he doesn't fit what we want here in Detroit, he's not going to be here. And that candor and that level of commitment to having what you want, the guy that you want, the type of people that you want in your building speaks volumes, because some GMs don't have that type of courage to stay that way, to stand on those morals and say, hey, I want guys that fit our system. So they just get the guy because he's a big name. You look at Louis Riddick from ESPN. He said this thing, and it has resonated with me for the last couple of months. He says there's a difference between acquiring talent and building a team. And that's what they want to do in Detroit. They want to build a team. They want guys that fit the culture, that fit Detroit. They're gonna, you look at the quick turnaround. But that's what they did. They stuck with the guys that fit the culture. The guys that didn't hack it, they're gone. You know what I'm saying? So you look at it. I like the direction of this regime. I love that they got the extended here in the off season. To match their contracts together, and I'm just excited for the future of Detroit. And like Anthony said, with the well drafting, they can take those contracts and they can pay them, and they can pay the key cogs in the wheel. And you got to look at some guys. They'll look at the hometown discounts because they like playing in Detroit because of the culture.
You guys both mentioned how much this team has changed, how it's changed via the draft. The fact that Dollar General Brad Holmes does not want to overpay to bring somebody in. He's very conscious of the books and keeping us under the cap. Let's talk real quick about non-Lions players affecting things and the scouting department. I was really surprised after 3 straight drafts where we just seemingly just do no wrong, that this scouting department just hasn't been eviscerated by other teams. And I do get a few people have left here and there, but if this team comes out this year and just crushes another draft, each of you offer your thoughts. How fast do you think next off season we're going to see some major changes, not only through the scouting department being picked apart by other franchises, but also the inevitable part of some of these coordinators and other coaches being taken by Detroit? Do you think that you're going to see a lot of these guys gone after this year?
This may be the last time we see either Aaron Glenn or Ben Johnson in Lions colors. It may, and to be honest with you, I think it's going to be, people think it's going to be Ben Johnson. I think it's going to be Aaron Glenn first.
I'll go with that.
I think it's going to be Aaron Glenn's first because of the fact that the level of experience he's had in the coaching ranks. Ben Johnson is fairly new. I think he's more loyal to maybe the line. Not the Lions themselves, but as far as the individuals in the building, Dan Campbell, he's still learning. He's been in Detroit for a long time, and he doesn't seem ready to leave just yet. But Aaron Glenn, he's taking in every interview, and I think he's going to be the first one out of the building. And when you saw it last year, if Ben Johnson leaves, I think he takes Hank Fraley with him. That was the talk last offseason, that if Ben Johnson leaves, Hank's going to go. And to me, I think that was the biggest keep of the former regime was Hank Fraley, because he is a hell of an offensive line coach. He does a hell of a job. Even when you have a guy that goes down, it's seamless. You get these guys that just come in and they just play, and the offensive line play doesn't drop. So, but I agree with you. You're going to see some guys out of the building, but it's going to be, in my opinion, going to be Aaron Glenn before it's Ben Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, the best teams have these issues, don't they? You are going to lose your coordinators. You're going to lose people in your departments who have done an amazing job and are going to go do it elsewhere. But for me, I'm not as worried, because for me, they have a really good track record when it comes to their staff and how they act on them, and not just for the good as well. Like I said, when they first came in, they kept the right guys, Ben and Hank, like everyone else out the door. And then, you've had great guys come in, Kelvin Shepherd, he's done an amazing job. But then they're not also afraid to admit when they're wrong. Like, Anthony Lynn, he was on his ass out the door very quickly because it wasn't working with him. John Scott Jr., he's not doing the defensive line anymore. And he actually, all run defense, really great last year. Edge rushers, poor. That's no longer good enough. Out the door, trying to get better at the position. So they're not afraid to make the calls when they're wrong. And they get a lot of the calls right. And they're growing a lot of the guys from inside the organization now organically. Like, a lot of these guys are coming in with not too much experience, but they can sit there behind AG. All these guys, a lot of them inexperienced as coaches, but they're sat there developing, learning, so that when he goes, they're going to be ready to step up into these positions. And the best organizations grow their guys organically. So I'm quite happy at where we're at. I think we're really good when it comes to our staff and finding out where the flaws are, finding out who's good, keeping them. I would just pay Hank to the moon. Like I would fight and fight and fight to keep him here. I don't necessarily, because I get why he might go with Ben, because Ben will still do the offensive stuff. He'd be an OC in name only, but I think he's got a good job here. I think he's part of something good. He would stay, but it doesn't worry me, because if our staff are getting poached, it means we're a good team, and that's what we all want. And I trust the organization to replenish.
Yeah, I'm with both of you guys that it's inevitable at some point. Hey, part of coaching, I'm going to say the vast majority of coaches out there, like 99%, want to go from being assistant coaches to head coaches. There are very few that want to just remain in assistant roles. I get the pay increase, but it's also how a coach is wired. You want that competition. You want to be able to prove yourself. I'm actually surprised this offseason. I thought Fraley would get offers to come on, just because I think he has done a heck of a job. But here's a question for both of you guys. Ben Johnson, obviously, he had some opportunities, it looks like, the last couple of years to interview with teams, and who knows, maybe potentially even had offers to become head coaches. When this season's done, I get Aaron Glenn maybe taking off, maybe other people will be taking off. But when Ben Johnson leaves, do you think there's any possibility he tries to take Jared Goff with him?
Ooh, I mean, it would depend on a new deal, I guess, because if Goff's going to get a new deal this year and is just 1 year into it, that could be very expensive to trade for. And it could be very expensive for us to trade him away. Like, we might not be in a position to do so. So I'm not sure. I think the only way that happens is if we let Goff ride out this last year and don't give him a contract, and then he just sort of goes with him in free agency. But I don't think so. I think Goff is going to be here for the long term, regardless of whether Ben Johnson is or not. I think he's about to get paid, and he will see out his contract here. So I'm going to say no, unless they don't give him a new deal.
Yeah, I'm going to say no. If he gets a new deal, he's not going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, it's because, like you said, the cap implications of trading away a guy who just signed a contract is, it's going to be monstrous. We just got out of dead cap hell, and I don't think Brad Holmes wants to venture down that road again. But I'm going to have to say a big no on that. One. Okay. I just don't see it.
Fair enough, man. Just throwing it out there. So here's a question for you both before we start talking about the draft a little bit. There's all sorts of speculation who's going to start opposite Aiden Hutchinson. So I'm going to ask you guys, do you think it's going to be a player currently on the team, somebody to be drafted? If it is a player who's currently on the team, who do you think it's going to be? I know who I'm going with. Let's see what you guys say.
It's going to be Marcus Davenport. That's who's going to start at the beginning of the season. It's going to be him. They paid him the money. It's going to be him until someone else kicks him off that pedestal. And if they draft a guy, then and he outworks him in camp. But right now, it's going to be Marcus Davenport. It won't be a James Houston until he develops into a 3-down pass rusher. Right. His game is more, he's that 3rd-down pass rusher. He's a specialist, and I don't think he has the size to play out there. Saying at 3 downs. I just don't think he does. But it's going to be Marcus Davenport. What you got, Ant?
No, I agree with you, Kurt. I think the most beneficial thing for this organization would be for Davenport to come in and play really well, because he will play far beyond the sum of money that we're giving him if he does play at his high level. So he will get first bite at it, providing he does well in camp. We have to wait and see what happens with the draft, though, more importantly, because we don't know if we're going to get someone to replace him. But as of right now, it will be Davenport, and then you will have Pascal and Houston in behind trying to fight for that job.
You guys are crushing my heart with all this talk, man. To me, James Houston should play left and right, and he might have to play safety. I might make him the quarterback. I just think he's awesome. But anyways, let's talk about this. I know there's been some speculation that Detroit could trade out of the draft and acquire a veteran player. There's been some speculation. Patrick Surtain's on the board. It sounds like the Denver Broncos have talked to about every team in the league and everybody in the UFL for acquiring this guy. I get they're in a rebuild. They're looking to get assets. each of you guys, if you're Detroit, would you make a move for this kid?
First of all, he's a fantastic player. Second of all, no, because I couldn't give the capital away. Like 29 is not going to mean nothing to the Broncos. They're going to want a lot more than just 29, and I don't want to trade away next year's first. Like, this team again is built on the strength of its drafting. You have to keep your prime draft picks to keep infusing that prime talent into the team. And Patrick Surtain is a prime talent. Do not get me wrong at all, but I just feel the way we build here, it's better for us to keep these prime picks for Brad to get these guys on this team, because they're the ones, that's the backbone of our team. These prime picks are the backbone of it. They're young, the contracts are better. You have to pay Surtain a ton of money as well as give up all this draft capital. I don't want to do that. Long-term sustainability, that's the goal here. That puts that at risk.
Depends on how desperate Denver is. You got to look at Denver traded away a lot of picks in that Russell Wilson trade. So they're looking for assets. So you may be able to, slide a deal in where you can get, you don't have to give up the house to get a Patrick Surtain because of how desperate they are to get draft capital. So you may be able to, trade away a couple seconds, a second this year and a second next year. You may be able to do that just because of how desperate they are. Right. They're in a total teardown and rebuild. They're kind of like where we were a couple years ago. You look at the roster in Denver, it's going to be bare bones. They just got rid of their best wide receiver. They're right now they're turning it down. So, and the thing with Patrick Surtain, you can get him on his rookie deal for the next 2 seasons, right. Because you can, he's still on his rookie deal, so you can get him this year, and then you can extend him next year. So, depends on how desperate Denver is. I would make that move for it. Because to be honest with you, he's a proven commodity in the league. I'm not saying that the guys that come in the draft aren't good, but he's a proven commodity at the pro level, and that's what would entice me to make that move to get Patrick Surtain.
No, I'm with both you guys that I don't want to overspend or give the moon up or give 27 first round picks or something like that for him. But I also agree with you guys that if you can get them at the right price, especially you get to draft day and there's somebody sliding down that board that maybe I think one of the quarterbacks, they're sliding down and Denver hasn't addressed it already, man, because I do think with Surtain, like you said, Kurt, you got 2 years left on the rookie deal. You're in a total teardown. We all agree on that. And I think if you've got to think about the future, is a cornerback on a second-year deal where he's probably going to get paid pretty well, is he still going to be relevant by the time that rebuild is really kind of kicked into gear? I think at that point, by the time it happens in 3 or so years, he's 28, 29. Are you really going to get great value out of him? I mean, I don't know. We'll see what Denver does. All right, I got a question for both of you guys. The Lions, hey, it seems like this is the deepest team we've had since maybe 1957. I mean, this team is just deep across the board. Not any real glaring holes on it. So here's the big question. Come a week from Thursday when the draft happens, if we don't trade up, trade down, whatever we go, if you're Brad Holmes, are you going offense or defense? And where do you think you go with that first and second round pick?
Okay. Brad, go defense. This is me. We've spent a lot of capital in the offense. Now, I'm not saying he hasn't done anything on the defense. You can look at Jack Campbell in the first round last year with that, with that second pick. But I just think that one thing we haven't drafted in the top rounds, we talk about day one, is a corner. He hasn't done that yet. I think the earliest he drafted a corner was iffy in round 3, and that was like one of the either compensatory picks or one of those like extra picks that we had. So cornerback in the first round for me, I just you get down there and it depends on who's available. If you get your Kool-Aid or you get Arnold down there, or you maybe trade up, I don't know, but I'm going defense. And then I'm going rebuild restock the offensive line. So secondary as far as cornerback is concerned, and then maybe another pass rusher. My son wants to be on the show this morning. Excuse him. Um,
Fine, man.
and for me, I'm going defense. We've given the offense a lot of weapons. We can find another receiver in those mid rounds this year. Like, because I'm not convinced that we need another wide receiver. I'm just not,
Right.
But defense, I want a high level corner in Detroit, a young one that we can develop into a long term. Like, you look at the guys that we like, Aiden Hutchinson, how he's going to be a cornerstone piece. We don't have that cornerstone cornerback on the roster right now.
So I'll prefix this by saying, because every time you say what you do in the draft, someone goes, you don't know what Brad's going to do. No, I don't know what Brad's going to do. Brad is a mastermind, and I can only hope to have 1% of the brain he does there. But if it's me this year, I actually love where we are in this draft at 29, because we keep getting told again and again and again, this is an offense-heavy first round. Could break records, could be more than 20 players from the offense selected in the first round. What's that going to do? It's going to push all that juicy defensive talent right down to the 20s, the early 20s, and Brad Holmes and other like-minded, GMs are going to be like, ooh, right for picking. You've got teams up there. You've mentioned Saints, 2 picks in the top 150. Miami, just 6 picks in the entire draft. Denver, got nothing. Like, these guys are going to start falling because everyone's desperate for offensive line, quarterbacks, wide receivers, all this sort of stuff. And that prime, juicy defensive talent's going to fall way beyond where it should be. You go and get that. It's defense for me all the way. You go and get your pick there. You make a nice prime, juicy steak and you put it right in there. And then afterwards, you start with the offensive line, because you are going to need to sort that next year as well. You're going to need to start getting your guys for the future in to train them especially behind the right guard position. Seidler's a 1-year guy. You want his replacement instantly ready to go in 12 months when he's done. So, yeah, you go up for your defense first because its draft's going to fall perfectly for us. Then you start with your offensive line. That is what I would do.
Yeah, and I think I'm sure we've all talked about it at some point during this offseason. The Lions, where they're at, especially with 29, I really do think there could be potentially some offensive players, maybe a quarterback or two, that slide down there, and somebody's going to try to make a tempting offer to Detroit to come up and get that pick just so they can secure the 5th-year option. Doesn't mean it will happen. I agree with both of you guys that I think there's a real strong possibility perhaps 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks go before the Lions select. Now a couple wide receivers. So like you were saying, Ant-Man, that a lot of guys who could be upgrades on the defensive side of the ball slide down to Detroit at 29. When or if that happens, I got to imagine, even if you see a premium pick maybe at 22 or 23, I think there's real possibility because we have so many picks this year, such a deep team. It's going to be a challenge for Brad Holmes or any GM to, if you draft well, to keep so many picks on the roster or put it on the practice squad where they're probably going to be gobbled up by one of these rebuilding teams that maybe you're tempted to trade up to 23, 22, maybe somewhere in the mid or acquire a person of interest. Now, with that being said, if you had your dream scenario, Anthony, who would be the defensive player you would want Detroit to bring in?
There's 2 of them. Actually, they're not corners; they're on the defensive line. I know people say he's going to go out the first round, but if Newton's there at 21 or 22, I'm going up. If Versa's there at 21 or 22, I'm going up. I will take the bookend opposite Hutch, and I will put him on there. I will strengthen that. It's trenches with Brad. Keep reinforcing your trenches. Keep your next guys in there. So, like, if a corner was to fall, maybe, but the corner gets so stacked, I feel like we're all right in that regards. The D linemen, when they fall, go get them. Like, those 2 would be game changers for us. They would be the first guys I'd go for.
Okay.
I'm going opposite. I'm going corner first, then I'm going defensive end. It's like, you look at the Lions roster right now, I'm like Davenport, Houston, Pascal, Kaminsky. You got a lot of guys that play either that interior, or that are hybrids that can play on the edge and can play in the interior. I'm not saying that it's not important to have a young defensive end. I'm not saying that. Don't get me wrong. I hate people. Hey, Kurt's over here talking about we don't need defensive ends. Yeah, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that we have enough talent on the roster right now that we can. That if you look at, for me, what is the position that we have that is the least deep outside of safety? Because we haven't talked about safety a lot. I think we can get one because we have our starters, but I'm looking at Amik and I'm looking at Carlton. One of those guys is going to start on the outside. Even though Amik can play outside, I think he's going to be more of a slot where you can move Branch around, kind of move him around on the chessboard, play him some of the safety and play him, in the nickel as well. But at the end of the day, I want a big name, big time corner. You already have a good man cover on one side. I want an excellent man cover on the other side.
I can get that, yeah, especially since it appears Aaron Glenn is most comfortable when he's going blitzburg, so man-to-man or zero coverage in the back half and just sending more people after the quarterback than they can block typically. So, yeah, you're going to want somebody who can play press man-to-man. I think the Lions have addressed a lot of things with the secondary, but, if you're going to do that, you've got to have some dudes who can get out there and get some wins, and I agree with you that if they can continue to upgrade that secondary, so be it. One of the people that is speculated to drop to Detroit or potentially Detroit at 29 would be Cooper DeJean. What do you guys think of this kid? I've got my thoughts on him, but I'd be real interested to see what both of you guys have to say about him. I get he can return kicks and such, but do you think you bring in him and he can play sort of like Brian Branch, the slot/safety? What are your guys' thoughts?
No, I wouldn't draft Cooper DeJean. That's what good athlete, and I was talking about this on last week on the Detroit Lions News. I was hanging out over there on their podcast, and he's a good athlete. But we've had good athletes, and when you have an athlete like that, sometimes they don't fit. Your scheme. Like Brian Branch, we knew he could play corner and he could play safety. Cooper DeJean is kind of everywhere. He's a good athlete. But we've had the workout warriors. They come in and not really fit on this roster. I'm not saying that the kid's not a good football player, but for what we need in our secondary, I don't think he fits. He's not a good man-to-man cover corner, and that's what we need on this roster.
I don't think he's going to get past the Packers anyhow. Like they're infatuated with him. I really like him. Like one of the guys with over here, like he's big on his Iowa football, and again, it's a proven talent factory of NFL production. He's great, not just the return ability, but he's just a damn good corner. I agree with Kurt. I don't know if this schematically fits with what we do, but as a player, he's great, and I think he's going to be great in the NFL. So, but yeah, just personally not for me, but great player.
One of my worries with him is when I watch him on tape, I think his initial press at the line when they do bring him up is pretty decent. The problem is when he has to recover, when somebody beats that press, that's where I think he kind of gets into some trouble, I guess you'd say. I like the guy, but I don't know if I'd like him in the first round. I think if you get him in the late second round or third, you'd have something. But yeah, I was interested to see what your guys' thoughts were. One of the kids that I have liked, I don't know if either one of you have ever heard of him, but Ryan Watts, cornerback, Texas. He's fast. I think he's a developmental guy, but if you guys get a chance, go ahead and check him out. I think if you're thinking long-term with him, he's not bad at all. All right, a couple other things here as we're getting into the show a little bit here, but you see the comment section still blowing up here. Trying to get you guys on the board as quick as I can, but also trying to rotate through things. All right, so I know one of the biggest topics this offseason is going to be, Hendon Hooker. Everybody's going to want to see him in the preseason, what he can do. The fact that they haven't signed Jared Goff doesn't alarm me. I think they're just doing what most teams typically do with a quarterback. They're going to, be real coy, test things out. So here's a twofold question for both of you guys. If you're Jared Goff, would you really want to leave the Detroit Lions and go to a third team in your NFL career? It seems like an ideal situation. So are you willing to take less if you're Jared Goff to remain with the Detroit Lions? And the other part of that question is, how much pressure do you think Hendon Hooker puts on the Detroit Lions front office to either re-sign or not re-sign Jared Goff? Sorry for the deep question.
And go ahead. I'll give you first swing at this one.
So with Goff, I would, if I'm Goff, I want to stay here, right? Because who else wanted him 3 years ago? Nobody. Sean McVay didn't want him. The league were like, oh, he's a bust. He can't do anything. Like, Brad Holmes believed in him since day one. Like, since the Rams days, Brad Holmes has showed unwavering faith in Jared Goff when no one else would. So from that point of view, he's not going to find another GM who's going to put such blanket faith in him to come in and do a job. So I think Goff's going to want to stay. And you see how he's embraced the city. Like, he's at home watching Red Wings games the other day, posted it on his IG. It's like, he has taken on the identity of the city to a T. Yeah. You don't, and you know, all these players say, oh yeah, I represent, but a lot of them just, they can't be bothered. He has. So for that point of view, I think he wants to stay here. The deal should absolutely be done. People saying he's not worth this, he's not worth that. We talked about the culture of this team earlier and what you build with it. Jared Goff is an exemplification of this team that no one believes in you and you prove them wrong. And if you let him go, you undermine the entire message you're sending out to every player on this roster. No matter where you come from, if you win your opportunity and you keep it, you get rewarded. You've got to pay him from that point of view because it just undermines your entire message there. So I want Goff to stay. Goff should stay. Is Hooker going to put pressure on the front office? No, he shouldn't, because what has he done to earn that right so far? He's done nothing. He's been injured. Like, he's got to start practicing his ass off. He's got to be in every week showing, look, I'm ready to go. You know, you can put your trust in me, etc. He has done nothing to earn that right so far. And I will scream this from the rooftops. Everyone's saying Hooker's the future, etc. If the Detroit Lions thought Hendon Hooker was the quarterback of the future, they would never have traded down 3 times and risk losing him and then draft him. You don't do that for a quarterback who's your future. They kept drafting backwards to get capital for Broderick Martin. Right. Like, that's how high their priority level was with Hendon Hooker. They didn't care whether he was there or not. They've got him because he's got a high floor as a backup. That is Hendon Hooker's role in Detroit. That is all Hendon Hooker's role will ever be in Detroit, providing Goff is healthy. He shouldn't really be threatening our starting job. You don't draft back for your quarterback of the future. Ever. So no, he should be putting no pressure on that front office to not re-sign him. And Goff should absolutely want to stay here.
Yeah. Jared Goff has embodied Detroit. I don't think he wants to leave. He said he wants to be here long term. And I don't get all the Jared Goff hate. The guy has been either top 10 or even top 5 in most quarterback categories the last couple seasons. I don't get the hate for Jared Goff. I mean, like, I don't get this. Oh, he's not worth. What the hell you mean he's not worth it? You can see the drop off in play if he goes out of the game. It's what?
Right.
And I'm not saying, and I will be honest, I wasn't the biggest Jared Goff supporter. I was just let him play and let it see how it works out type of guy. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't a Goff basher, but I was like, you know, and he look at his first season, he came to the Detroit, didn't give him a lot to work with, you know what I'm saying? So his first year was rough. But you look at the next 2 seasons, man, top 5, top 10 in most passing categories. This guy, Jared Goff, has proven the guy got us to the NFC Championship game. And if it wasn't for a couple of drop passes, that was not his fault. We would have been in the Super Bowl last year. Jared Goff did his part last year. I don't understand the Jared Goff hate. He's not worth what? I don't get that he's not worth this. He's not worth that. Jared Goff has proven himself as a good quarterback, and he's all the game managers don't throw for 4,500 yards. I'm sorry, they just don't. If you look at his stats last year, his stats were good or better than Patrick Mahomes last year. They were. I mean, line them up together, he was better. Now, the thing with Hendon Hooker, like I said, guys, I see how his family all the time down here in North Carolina where I live, because this was his family is from this area where I live. And you were spot on, man. You don't draft a guy in that position to be your quarterback of the future. You bring him. He's going to be a good solid backup, but once he can get healthy and start playing, because he hasn't taken a snap in the league. You can't say the guy's putting pressure on somebody you haven't seen him damn play yet. I mean, I don't get the. And my man, guy rest his soul, my man Jim from Lions on the Project say this all the time. He says the most popular player in Detroit has always been the backup quarterback.
Correct. Yep. That's old Killer Kowalski saying. Yeah.
So, man, get out of here with that. Jared Goff's the guy. Pay him his damn money, and you develop a Hooker as a solid backup quarterback.
So, do you guys think that the only reason why people they're naysayers for Jared Goff, is it just because he can't scramble for, 15, 20 yards, 5 yards at times? Because to your point, Kurt, I know you both brought it up. I want to say whenever they made the switch in offensive coordinators during Goff's first season, since then, he's been the number 4 quarterback overall in the NFL in regards to stats. And you look at his stats, yeah, he has a couple moments here and there once in a while where you're just like, what happened? But I mean, I think we're more exposed to Goff in those moments just because everybody watching the show probably watches every game of Goff's tenure in Detroit. Every quarterback has some moments where you're like, what were they just doing there? It happens. But Goff, it seems like we all agree, he's been pretty money the vast majority of his time here. And I know Brad Holmes has said it's going to be a whole lot easier to get worse at that position, and probably significantly worse than it would be to get better. So I guess my question to both of you guys, just real quick, is are the naysayers on Jared Goff just because he can't scramble?
The naysayers are because there's still the perception that he can't do it without a surrounding cast. Like, people have been spoiled by Patrick Mahomes. Like, Patrick Mahomes is an actual generational quarterback. He's just won a Super Bowl with, what the hell's that receiver call? Like, what is that? What is that he's got to work with? Mm-hmm. And the gap between him and the next tier of quarterbacks is so large that people have forgotten what the original standard used to be. And Goff is closer to that than any of those are to Mahomes. But like they're saying, he's got the great O-line that we've played loads of money, and he's got loads of weapons, etc. Like, he had no weapons when he first came here. He had a rookie Amon-Ra St. Brown, a crop Terrell Williams, and, the kid who didn't even make the roster, like who we spent to him, Brashard Perryman. But he's still, passed for nearly 13,000 yards in 3 years since. I mean, everyone goes Justin Herbert is an amazing quarterback in this league. He's had Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston. Like, you look at the offensive line, Rashawn Slater, Corey Linsley, 2 of the best at their positions there. Austin Eckler, running back. Great surrounding cast to him. Has he won a playoff game? No, he hasn't. And it's like, he's had a great surrounding cast there. And the amount of money they've put in that defense, Bosa, Mack, they've, the corner they got for JC Jackson, put tons of money into that team, created a super team. If they won a playoff game? No. So it's very subjective that you use all this term of, like, can he do it with the talent around him? The fact is, he's done it. He has got us there, and he has taken over games sometimes where the run game has not done its job. He's working with a defense that has been rough. Like, the pass defense has been the last 2 years? He has to throw it a lot, keep us in games, and I think it's just underappreciated. But it's more like people thinking he can't do it, but everyone wants Mahomes now, so a lot of quarterbacks are going to be considered substandard just because of the few at the top who are truly elite, and you don't get them every day. Like, Mahomes is a mystery, like Brady.
Yeah, he's an enigma wrapped in a riddle. You're not going to see a guy like a Patrick Mahomes, like, he comes around once in a generation, and, but Jared Goff has the tool. You look at the development, he's a leader. When he got here, he was a quarterback. When you look at him now, he's a leader on this team. And he takes control. That first Tampa game, we didn't have a run game. He just had to take over the game. Montgomery went down and Gibbs was on the bench. So you had Craig Reynolds, and I love Craig Reynolds, but he's the situational, back. You put him down there, down to the goal line, just if Montgomery can't go. But he's not a guy he's not a 3-down back where you can, do a lot of stuff with him. He can make plays here and there, but Jared Goff has put this team on his right shoulder more than he should have been asked to do, because like you said, lack of defense, saying our secondary was trash last year. It's one of those things where what else can he do? What else do you want him to do to prove himself? He's proven himself time and time again over the last 2 seasons, and Goff is he deserves his money. Please stop hating on Jared Goff.
Yeah, I compare the Jared Goff situation to, I get him going back 1,000 years, but the Eric Kramer situation. I mean, Kramer did a lot of good things. He might not have been the most off-the-chart quarterback, but I do think it probably ultimately hurt the Detroit Lions when they decided to move on from him and maybe kind of derailed some of their success in the 90s. With Jared Goff, to me, I look at it and go, you want to know what the team and the coaches think of a player? Put him in a pressure situation and see if they decide to go to him. Over his tenure here in Detroit, there's been a lot of close games late in the game on the line, fourth and whatever. They don't give the ball to this person or trust the defense. They say, Goff, go win it for us. You can think back to Aaron Rodgers' last game in Green Bay, the key 4th down late in the game. They said, hey, Goff, go get us a first down, throw it to, I guess would have been Clark, and then let's just, take some knees. Same with the Rams playoff game, and you guys get the gist. There are just so many different times throughout his tenure here in Detroit where the coaching staff says, we believe in this guy. The players around him believe in this guy. It's just for whatever reason, whatever the reason is, there are some fans that just don't want him here or want to, I guess they just have the belief that the next guy is going to be, exponentially better. And I just think, man, that's a dangerous situation to be in, because you don't have a quarterback, you've got zero shot in this league unless, I guess, you're the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You're not just replacing quarterback talent, like just what you see on paper, how good he is as a quarterback. Mm-hmm. Like you've mentioned, his leadership in the room. Like, again, how are you going to find a quarterback? They're chanting his name at Red Wings games. Did that ever happen to Stafford? Like, he has embodied everything about this place. He is bought in as much as a player can be bought in. And again, this just sits to your culture. You brought him here, and all we've ever done of him is asked more and more and more, and asked him to prove himself. And this was a guy who was completely down in the dumps when he got here. And every time he has shown that grit, determination to prove people wrong, that central messaging. He is the leader of the locker room. You can't just say, oh, well, thank you. You've done everything we've asked you for 3 years, but you know what? Actually, you're not that good. See ya. You can't do that, because that just destroys everything in your locker room. It destroys everything that you're about. So, and this thing with Goff, I think the central thing to this is no one knows what this contract is. People are going out there trying to say he wants 55 million a year, I think, to undermine him and his position. His doubters, detractors sometimes want to say he wants a bag, he wants to rinse Detroit. We're not going to be able to put a team around him. We're going to go back into purgatory. Nobody knows what Jared Goff wants or is asking for. And most importantly, Brad Holmes isn't going to overpay him. As much as he loves him, Brad Holmes' central core philosophy is long-term sustainability of his football team. No matter how much he loves a player, he will never let himself be held to ransom, even by a quarterback. If Goff does come and say, I want 55 million a year, Brad Holmes will say, see you later. That is what he will do. Right. Then that is the central theme of this. If Goff does decide to get greedy, Holmes will get rid of him. Likelihood is Goff will take a good deal here because he's with the only guy who's ever stuck by him, and he will take a deal to reflect that. Yeah.
Dr. Detroit, you're wrong. On Jared Goff's most of his yards being yak. You're absolutely wrong. He was tops in the league in down the field throws. Go check out the stats. He was one of the tops in the league in down the field throws. And we're talking about 10 to 20 yards down the field. He was one of the top players in the league at that stat.
And his development of receivers.
Yeah.
Who was talking about Josh Reynolds when he came here?
Yeah.
No one. No one knew who he was. He was another face. Now everyone's devastated. He's gone. Amon-Ra, one of the best receivers in the league. Builds them up.
And here's my thing. He beat the most clutch quarterback in Detroit history in a playoff game.
He did.
They put it on his back to win that playoff game. He beat the most clutch quarterback in Detroit history in the wild card round of the playoffs. What can you say about that? And against his old teams. Against his old team. The guy that they traded him for came back, the prodigal son returns to Detroit and loses to the guy who replaced him.
And
he could have ruined his career. That could have ruined his career if he'd have lost that Rams game. Because everyone would have said they were right. That is the highest pressure situation you could have ever put him in.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess Jared Goff that night after the Rams game probably had a little bit more than just Mountain Dew in his cup.
Oh yeah,
he was probably celebrating a little bit. But whatever it is, it does seem like Goff is just a lightning rod. No matter which side of the debate you're on, you're either you like Goff or you don't. I get Patrick Mahomes does certain things that maybe Goff can't, but you know what? If you're saying everybody has to be Michael Jordan in order to be, worthy of being the leader of the team, I think you're setting yourself up for failure just because Goff, we know at this point what he is. We know what he's doing for the community, what he's done for this franchise, and what he's done on the field. It is possible to get better in him. I just think it's a real big roll of the dice. Now, maybe at some point somebody else does come along. Maybe Goff's contract demands are so high, but I would say just deal with that when that happens. If somebody beats him out or just, he gets crazy and wants, $22 billion a year or something like that. But I don't anticipate that's going to happen. All right, we're getting close to 8 o'clock here, so I'm going to probably start wrapping it up here just because I know the Mountain Dew is calling my name before I go to work. So, hey, each of you, let's break it down. Tell everybody watching in case they don't know who you guys are, which I can't imagine that's true. You both are legends. So, hey, both of you go through and just tell them where the people can find you, et cetera, et cetera. Pump yourself up here. Have some people come over and check you out.
Definitely, you can find my man Anthony over at Royal Alliance UK. He's a star over there, man. Across the pond, I've worked with him several times. We used to work on Detroit Lions on the Prowl together. I've done his show. He's been on my platform. But shout out to the great, as I call him, Jason Statham Jr. With that beard and the bald head. But that's my guy. But you can find me over at kurtsteele.com. I write for Sideline Report for fansided.com. And
Kurt, you went silent.
I haven't done any videos lately. I was in school. I just graduated, but I'm going on vacation next week. I'll be in the Caribbean for the draft, but I will be back doing some video content. I might have a rebrand of my platform, but we'll see coming up shortly. But check me out over at kurtsteele.com. You can find all my stuff over there, my Sideline Report and everything else. But if you want to find a good platform, man, my guys over at Royal Lions UK, they do college, they do pro, they do Lions, man. Andy, go ahead and take them away. Tell them where they can find you, man.
Oh, thanks, Kurt. Yeah, like as Curtis so ably just said there, you can find me at Royal Lions UK. We are a group of Detroit Lions fans from across the pond who just love to talk Detroit sports. So we usually go live on Mondays, Wednesdays. Come check us out there. Obviously, check out my man Kurt. Like, he's been so great to me doing this. I appreciate it all, and I'm glad to see you back again. I love doing shows. And shout out to you as well, Dan. Thanks for having me on this. I really appreciate it. You've got a really good thing going here in the mornings. I love how you get up so early to do this. Catch everyone as they're getting up out of bed. It's great. Thanks to everyone in the chat who's been in there today. Appreciate it all. But yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, you can tell it's time for Dan to get off because the sun's coming through on your green screen.
Us vampires, man, we got to get off before the sun hits. So, hey, that's my thing. So, anyways, I want to thank you both for coming on in. I want to thank everybody in the Dew crew for being here every morning. If you haven't yet subscribed to Lions Talk Live, please consider doing so. We're about 10 or 15 subs away from hitting 6,400. Also, if you enjoyed the video and everything everybody did here for you today, consider hitting that thumbs up button. It helps out a lot. Otherwise, we'll see you all on the next Lions Talk Live. Take care, everybody.